Welcome to No Code Explorers, the podcast where we relentlessly search for the answer to one singular question: how far can we get without coding? It's been about 2.5 years since I first became obsessed with no coding, and I understood that we could develop startup products without any code or with a little code only. Since then, technology evolved so much that now I really want to understand and find out the extreme cases. People who are building very robust products without any code or with very little coding. Want to join me in this exploration? And today we have Dale Wilkinson. Dale created Good Gigs, a platform that connects mission-driven companies who need help hiring with professionals who want to use their skills for good. He built his product with his own hands. He learned how to do it in Bubble, created the first versions himself, and later on delegated it to another team. The conversation with Dale was filled with insight. We talked about how he pivoted early on when he discovered the business model he had in mind didn't work. And we ended with a question: without no code, would he have been able to launch his startup? All right, Dale, welcome to No Code Explorers. I'm really excited to have this conversation because I've been using Good Gigs and it feels great to use the product. So why don't we start by you telling us who you are and why did you start Good Gigs?
Yeah, and I'll try and condense it. But first of all, Daniel, thank you so much. I'm excited as well to jump on. I always love talking about no code and my experience with it, the lessons I've learned thus far. But to give you a bit of a background first with what Good Gigs is, it's a platform to connect mission-driven companies with people who want to use their skills for good. They want to create a career that they love, that has some meaning, and it does good for the world as well. And the background to why I started that, and it's about 2 years in, and it's evolved a few times, like the business model, the platform, and it's still going to evolve and pivot. Why I wanted to start that, before that, I had my own production company, video production. So I was a producer and was working with a whole bunch of clients that I absolutely loved. I loved my clients and who I worked with. I loved the creative ideation element to it. But in the end, we were working on projects where we were selling razors and beauty products and energy drinks. Nothing that I personally was that invested in or cared too much about. And I knew I wasn't the only one because of the teams that would get together, whether they were freelance teams that would work on these projects. It was all just a job, come on, this project, get paid for it. I wish I was doing something a little more purposeful, with my life. So I had a really good run in that kind of last year with a production company, which allowed me to take some time off. For me, it was this kind of decision: if I don't do it now, I'll keep on going ahead with this service company, with my production company. So this is the time, if I wanted to create something of my own, to do it. So I did. I took a few months off, and I was at the coffee shop every day, and I was in a really fortunate position I could do that. And I just came up with ideas, thinking about, my skill set, what was my background, what was this? And it all kind of accumulated around this checklist, basically, of what I wanted. And at the top of that checklist was a purposeful brand, something, a company, a brand, a service that did good for the world. I think that has come from different experiences in my life, knowing that I wanted to give back and I wanted to work on something that I was really invested in and passionate about and could feel good about. So, and then just started ideating and then came up with Good Gigs. And initially it was more of a freelancer marketplace, a la Upwork, Fiverr, with a kind of a donation model. And that was kind of the initial concept at the beginning. And then I jumped in and just started kind of validating that idea. And that initial business model turned out to not work. And then it's evolved more into a career platform for full-time opportunities.
Is it only for full-time opportunities, or you have it like a mix?
Yeah, it's predominantly full time, but there's freelance opportunities on there as well. There's remote opportunities, but predominantly it's full time jobs at these mission driven companies.
At some point, you probably thought of building something with code, and you must have found about Bubble or no code, and tell us the story behind the meeting with no code.
Yes, I thought I needed to build an app and I needed an engineer. To be honest, I didn't know what I needed, and my background being a producer, that is something that job entails, right? That you bring the right people, you find the right people. So you end up kind of being very resourceful. So it was a matter of going out, hey, look, this is the initial concept. I'm looking to build a web app, a mobile app. What kind of role, what kind of person do I need to help me build this? Mm-hmm. And speaking to a few people in the tech space through friends of friends, they're like, look for a full stack developer. I got connected with a developer that was a head engineer of a startup here in Los Angeles. Connected with him. He was really cool, Alec Dibble. And at the same time, I was hearing about, and I'm pretty sure it was through Twitter, I was hearing about this thing called no code. And then through that, saw Bubble. And this was at the same time. So I went to kind of Bubble, the website. This is, over 2 years ago now. Had a look at it. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I sent that to Alec, the developer, and was like, what do you think of this? And he jumped in. He was kind of blown away with it. And he's like, I've seen some kind of no code platforms, and this one seems to be pretty legit. You can build pretty comprehensive apps on there. So I think this is, a really good thing to build this first kind of MVP. So I still, in the no code space, I still kind of cheated it because it was at the same time where I was talking to him, and then he helped me once we got into Bubble and worked out what we were gonna build, what that first MVP was. He kind of held my hand on the difficult things that I wasn't getting my head around in Bubble, that being the data and the workflow. I think I had a pretty good grasp on the aesthetic, the design aesthetic, and the UX that I wanted based on making a list and exploring other sites and other apps and seeing what I liked and kind of compiling all that together. So what had happened is, like, once I got into Bubble and the more I understood it and the more I kind of just jumped in and did it, the less help I needed from Alec. So it was only when I got really kind of stuck, I'd go back to Alec, and it would be like a complicated thing that I was trying to calculation type thing on this invoice template I was trying to build. So that's how I came across Bubble. And that first MVP, I really kind of took over that. And this was still on that concept where it was going to be this freelancer marketplace, and companies would be able to donate on top of their payment to a freelancer. So the way I wanted to test this was to build an invoice template, online invoice template that freelancers could use, and it would have a donation model on the invoice. Worked a lot on that, spent too much time on that, worked out that it didn't work. Companies weren't going to do that.
Not only why didn't it work, but how did you find out it didn't work?
Yeah. So to take a step back, so this initial idea, it was going to be a marketplace where any company could come to the platform, get a freelancer, and then much like, you at the supermarket and at the checkout, and they say, hey, do you want to round up and donate to, this cause? It would be the same with, once they would wrap up a project with a freelancer, we would have all these other non-profit gigs that a for-profit company could sponsor and donate toward it. And I thought, it's too hard. Like, it's hard enough building a marketplace and getting the work in, getting the freelancers in first. How about I just build a online invoice template, because freelancers are already working with clients and they can use this. They've already got their clients, and they can start using the invoice template with their current clients. So I did that. Daniel spent way too much time like building this invoice MVP. And I'm so glad I did, because like that's how I learned Bubble, and jumped in, and then they started using it. And then you could tell that companies weren't donating to the to the nonprofit.
But they started using it, and the donation didn't come.
Correct.
Yeah.
So freelancers were using the invoice template, liked the idea of it. And then, this is on my end, I probably had these concerns beforehand. Being in that space and working with freelancers, both being a freelancer, hiring freelancers, generally a client will have a budget, it's already set. So this kind of donation model, yes, you're talking to different departments within the company, depending on the size of the business. So I already kind of had that concern, and that was proven that that was the case.
Look, you said like, I spent too much time on this, but I'm glad I did it because I learned, etc., etc. I want to touch on one point here, which is, for me, it's much better to learn from these kinds of failure than from the kinds of failure non-technical founders usually learn from, which is, I tried to launch something and I couldn't launch.
Yeah.
So you were iterating in the real world because you launched something and then something different. You launched the marketplace, you launched the invoice, and then you were able to pivot. And with no code, at least the way you told us, you had strong guidance in the beginning, and then after a learning curve, you were able to do it yourself.
Right. It wasn't like we just built a landing page. I built a dashboard that would track a freelancer's invoices, the actual invoice and the calculations. So I intimately got to know like how the database and the workflows would work. So I felt very strong about my abilities to kind of build with Bubble after that, even though, that didn't work out.
That project in itself didn't work, but the skills you have, because you did those complex calculations and stuff, you were able to bring them to the next iteration. I'm a developer, and I'm very used to coding, and now I have the experience of playing with no code and building things with no code as well. And through the course of chatting with people, learning from their experience, etc., I'm finding out that what you did for the invoice is, it involves the same level of abstraction that coding involves. So you were developing software. You had to do the math. You had to do the logic. You have to know how to build the visuals, the UI, UX, everything. But you were building with a different, approach, paradigm, whatever.
Yeah.
That helps people that are more visual than, math-like kind of intelligence. And it just amazes me that we now have people like you you are a developer. From what you just said, you are a developer. You just don't write lines of code.
Right. That and it was the kind of best compliment I got from Alec, the developer that was helping me in the beginning. The more and more kind of I got it, he's exactly what you said. He's like, you understand the logic behind it, so you're picking this up, and you'll be fine. Do I ever want to kind of go back and and be that involved in building something on Good Gigs now? No. Like, I think I'm at a place where, and this was MVP, the first MVP. And then when I kind of pivoted to more of a career platform and what it is now, a jobs board, and we got a company directory and a talent directory, I brought on a no code agency to help me with that.
Got it.
But I'm so glad I got the lesson initially, because, if they couldn't get to something, quick enough, I would be able to jump in and do it. And I knew what they were doing, and I understood the whole process.
You probably were able to hire them with much more confidence, because you could vet them and you could manage them better, right?
Totally. There was a moment where it's like they actually came to me and said, "Oh no, we can't do that." Like based on like adding a filter based on the jobs board. I was like, just go back to the MVP 1.0. I already did that. So they're able to kind of get that calculation or whatever we did.
You taught them how to do it.
Yeah. So there was a few things like, and that was a cool thing about, working on a platform that is still so new. And what is so good about Bubble's forum and the community is wherever you get stuck on something, and this is always kind of my advice to anyone jumping into Bubble, don't do what I would do a lot, where it's like, I'm just going to be stuck on this issue for an hour trying to work it out myself, where I kind of sometimes forgot that the community and the forum were there. And if you just go there, spend a couple minutes putting in your query, the issue you're having, someone has already solved it.
Yeah.
So and like there's a whole thread on it. Yeah, that's also what's really, really cool about Bubble and the no code ecosystem as a whole as well. How people help each other out.
Yeah, and I'm gonna use that segue to go back to something you mentioned before, which was you said about 2 years ago or something. So we're talking about 2019 when you first started, and you probably found out about it through Twitter. Probably #NoCode, right?
Yeah, I think at the same time when I had this kind of initial concept, I was going through this kind of pre-accelerator course, Founders Gym, and it's specifically a 6-week program to help underrepresented founders get ready to pitch and go out and get investment. And just to clarify, I'm part of the LGBTQ community, hence why I was in the underrepresented group. Through that, also talking with all these kind of first-time founders, sharing ideas and resources, and like, do we raise or don't we raise, and do we build with a developer? And then I think it could have been, it was either through Twitter or someone in that group was talking about this no-code thing.
The reason I asked is because I got into it through actually through a friend, and later on through #NoCode on Twitter. And exactly in 2019, I think there was some kind of explosion around it. Early days, nothing compared to what we have now in terms of adoption, but there was something brewing in 2019 on Twitter, right?
Totally. And I think if you're just starting out now as a founder and you're looking into no code and all the different options out there, I think it's actually a little more difficult because there are so many damn options. Like back then, it was like Webflow, Glide apps, and Bubble, and it was basically like, well, I want to do a full app, sign in, login, dashboard, all that kind of stuff. So Webflow ain't gonna, you could do Webflow with all these other kind of add-ons and plugins and such, but Bubble's the most comprehensive. So it was kind of a no-brainer to go with Bubble. Now, there's so many other options out there.
And so many people in the community also, right? So
right.
Those guys in the let's call it early days. Of course, they were there much earlier, but this early days for us at least, they were so helpful in terms of creating this community and the whole. It really felt like the open source culture I come from, which is like where people really want to build something better together and help each other out and contribute to a greater cause, right?
Yeah, like there was Joe Brown of New Code and Ben over at MakerPad, and they were having all these courses, and now there's kind of all these other no code communities that have popped up, and it still happens today even more so because there's more people in the community. Whenever someone does something innovative or new in Bubble or worked out how to do this or that, and they post it on Twitter, people are like so excited and get behind them, and then you work out, okay, how do you actually do it? And then they they tell you how they did it. It's very cool.
Have you ever ran into any kind of blocker or impediment that you thought, no, this cannot be solved without code?
Yeah. So I think, just trying to think, the current platform of good gigs. And this is the cool thing about the no code agency I use, Minimum. Mike and Yusuf over there. Yusuf is an engineer as well that now knows no code. So if there was any kind of things that we needed to kind of patch onto Bubble, he was able to jump in. So I think where the biggest thing with the current platform was building a job scraper that each day would go through our data of companies that were on the Bubble, back end and work out which jobs we were scraping from their career page. And that would bring it into a custom dashboard that we built in Bubble. So that was kind of the biggest thing, because prior to that, I was in MVP 1, I was curating those jobs. So I would manually, put those jobs in, and now we were able to, automate a good 80% of it, based on this job scraper. So that's where, his kind of coding abilities and patching together other tools really came in handy.
So in this situation, you actually used code for the scraping.
I'm pretty sure we do. Like, we also use, what's it called? Heroku. And see, this is kind of where I do get hands off.
It's
this is what I'm trying to do. And then they'll come back to me and is like, here are the kind of solutions, how we make it work.
Yeah, no, I love this, because I definitely think as an engineer myself that even though it's great that we celebrate no code, it's not no code versus code. Is
right.
building what we need to build with the best tool for it. And nowadays, most people can build things without code that they couldn't a few years back. But also, when they need code, they can hire people to do just that, and it's much more efficient and effective, right?
Yeah, which is when working with partners like Minimum, and I'm sure you guys do it as well, right? Where you can do both. You got the no code and the actual coding solution. So if you are going out as a founder and you have the resources to be able to partner up with someone that can help, that would be something that should be on the checklist, that they can do both.
Since you mentioned resources, did you bootstrap Good Gigs 100%? Where are you now in terms of sustainability, financial sustainability, and profitability, etc.?
Surviving. To be completely transparent, Daniel. So completely bootstrapped up, up to now. I have flipped flop in terms of, do I go out and raise? I feel like it's every 6 months I will think about that. Mm-hmm. Like, so at the beginning of the year, I thought, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go out and raise a pre-seed, and I put the pitch deck together, and I did all that and started to put together my dream list of angels and investors, and then I didn't go out. I thought, no, and this is something that I still struggle with, to be honest, because of, so the business model with Good Gigs is a subscription model on the company side, to be able to unlimited job postings on Good Gigs, and expanding that in terms of what else is offered in that. And we've got some pretty cool updates by the end of the year. But because of my background in doing video marketing and producing, I was able to also kind of segue that into doing employee branding marketing and talent marketing videos. So that has really allowed us to survive the revenue that's coming in through services. Now it's like, how do we also productize that
part? So let me see if I got it right. You have 3 pricing tiers on your website. I think, if I remember correctly, the highest tier includes some service around that. Is that?
Yeah, it's around like having on the job posts and on their company profiles, the ability to have videos posted on that. We also have a community, and we're going to add in that a company can get their own community space. They completely own and moderate their space within our community. But additional to that is, if they don't have any video around employee branding, that we can also offer that service.
Got it. So you sell the service as a way to finance the product. My favorite way to finance things is through service.
Right, and to be honest, Daniel, like I'm in two minds about it, right? Because in one moment, it means I've been able to survive. I've been able to continually improve the product and get help in to build it and such. But it also means a lot slower growth. So then do I continue to do that and be sustainable and a lot more slower and a lot more intentional? Or do I go out and actually raise money? And I'm still trying to work that out, to be honest.
Yeah, some questions around that. So because I've been struggling with these questions most of my life. Every time when you do service, your time is blocked for that. Then you don't have the time to build other things, and that's the trade-off. So the way I would approach it is like high margins on the service, right? So otherwise you cannot make enough profit to hire people to market the product, for example, or to do marketing for the product,
right.
But also trying, of course, to delegate the service and productize the service, just as you mentioned.
Yep.
Which means we need to be patient, right?
Yeah.
Which is the
right, which is all doable, because in the land of producing and video production, you do get these teams together. You can, over 10 years, I've built a really great network of creative people that I bring in to work on these projects. So it can be easy to do. I think the productizing it and tying it into the overall description on Good Gigs is what's going to be key. And I think that's kind of moving forward, putting all those pieces together. Hopefully I'll be a little more solidified in the next couple months.
Yeah, no, that's a great trajectory also. So you're growing the business and also learning how to make it happen. And then if you are to raise funds, at least you went farther along and you have more traction, more proof, et cetera, to raise it better, right?
Right. I think this time around, why I am right now questioning whether I go out and raise money is I'm also toying around with getting a co-founder. Up to now, I've been a solo founder and have been courting, a couple people just to see if we vibe, if they have the skill set that I'm missing. So I think if that's the case, if we were to bring on a co-founder, then we would definitely go out and raise.
Got it. And do you think you would have been able to bootstrap if you weren't using no code?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't want to say no. And it's also difficult to understand because this was my first technical project and getting people in to also help with that. Money was spent. It's you still pay. Even though they're a no-code agency, you're still, paying a decent amount of that as well. But I didn't have anything to benchmark that off. Like I had never previously built an app that a traditional engineer had built.
Maybe a better question would be, do you think Alec would have the time and availability and resources to invest with you if he had to code the whole thing?
He said straight up, he's like, when we were working on the project, he would always say, we would not be this far down the track if we didn't have no code. He's like, this would have cost $10,000 more and we would have had like a quarter of what we've done already. So I guess that's kind of the best, hearing from the engineer themselves, right?
Yeah. And that's my feeling also if I were doing, for example, today a product, if I had to choose between doing it with Bubble and or doing it with Ruby on Rails, which is the technology stack that I'm most familiar with, like I think I would still be faster with Ruby on Rails because I haven't learned enough Bubble, but only because of the learning curve. For example, in Webflow, where I have better skills, I never want to do a website with code again. If I can do it with Webflow, even though I'm very, very, very familiar with the code. And the speed is one of the, it's not only the speed, is I don't know if you've seen this, but the feedback cycle when you're coding is like you have to write something, then you have to move to another window and see and reload the page. Depending on the technology you're using, you have to reload it or not. But then you have to see the change, and then you have to go back to the code and tweak it, and then see the change again, go back to the code, see the change again. That workflow, when you're using Webflow, for example, it's instantaneous, and you can visually know you got it right.
It's funny you mentioned Webflow, because me learning Bubble and spending months with that learning curve and understanding that, and then I needed just to do a simple website for my partner, his website, and I was like, I'm going to try Webflow with it. And I jumped into Webflow, and I was just like, this is too hard. Like I just couldn't get it because it was so completely different to...
It's another approach.
And I was just like, I got PTSD from like all the learning and how much it took to learn Bubble. I was like, I don't need to be investing my time to learn Webflow as well. But yeah, to your point of what Bubble would do as well, like once you kind of go to the preview site and you can have that debugger, and it will really kind of tell you exactly where in the workflow it's breaking. And, you know, so you're able to kind of go back and make a much more informed update.
Yeah, and even when you're designing the visual experience is instantaneous, right? The feedback. So that changes a lot in terms of the development experience. Having instant feedback around the visual side is amazing. And of course, the functionality, you need to run it to get the feedback. If you have, just to use a simple example, you have a location field on Bubble, right? You need to type an address to see the list to know it's working, right? But once you've done it, then it's just you trust it will work next time you put a location field somewhere.
Yeah, and then, you know, they do updates. You know, if you haven't gone into your product for a while, sometimes you get a little rusty and you forget about, hang on, how did I do this? And then if you do need to make an update based on one of their updates that they've done, it can kind of take a bit of time to get your head back around it. And I'll call out as well, like I just talking about my partner, it wasn't his site. I ended up doing another site for someone else, and I used Wix. And Wix in the last 2 years, you know, they were just kind of, you know, the drag and drop websites, and it was pretty simple, and you couldn't really do too much. But Wix in the last 2 years have really kind of upped their game as well.
I didn't know about it. I just crossed them off my list from a few years ago, and I decided not to use them ever again. But they probably, yeah, that's great.
They got everything you need if you're not building an app or anything like that. And for me, it was like, hang on, do I go to Webflow and make something really flash, or do I just go to Wix? And Wix was the option, you know. So it's really cool. Right. It's really cool that you've got so many different options at different levels for creators.
Where do you imagine you're going to take the product? Because we're talking about the business and where you're still figuring which road to take, et cetera, et cetera. But what's your vision for the product in terms of Good Gigs?
Yeah, it's perfect timing as I'm potentially talking with a co-founder, potentially thinking about going out to raise, and really thinking about how do we differentiate Good Gigs to other career platforms out there. I really kind of model mostly on the Muse, another career site, Built In, which have all kind of local sites. So Built In Los Angeles, Built In New York. But really with Good Gigs is owning the social enterprise space, and, you know, really kind of like Built In, I think they define themselves as the place for tech startups, you know, and tech jobs. With Good Gigs, it's really about the social enterprise space, companies that are intentionally working on all these different social issues. And Good Gigs itself is issue agnostic, you know, so if you are interested in the environment, climate change, you know, you can come and search for those companies that are actively working on that issue, or racial equity, or LGBTQ rights, or gender equity. So that is really kind of the mission behind Good Gigs, is get more people using their skills for good and really owning that space. In terms of like where I'm going to take the product and how do we differentiate it from the other career sites out there, I think what's really going to be important, and what the plan is, community and courses. And I think it's easy to kind of remember the 4 C's. It's careers, content, community, and courses. And that's really going to be the approach. And, you know, it's going to evolve. It's going to keep on changing. It's really about what I keep on hearing from the HR teams at these mission-driven companies. Their biggest challenge is, you know, a lot of the time they don't, finding good talent, but a lot of the time they don't have any issues with inbound and getting applicants. It's about finding the mission-driven applicants and team members. So really, how do we make that process easier for the companies and champion the mission-driven companies that are out there doing good work? But then also, how do we make it easier for the job seekers to find those companies that are really mission-driven? You know, so I'm going to experiment with some different tools and features for both the companies and the job seekers coming to the platform.
How would you describe the balance of your marketplace at this moment? Like, we're always trying to make sure we have enough job postings and enough applicants. How would you describe the balance at this moment?
I'm still in the process of building the job seeker side of the market. So making sure that we are getting enough signups, that we're getting enough traffic to the site every month, so that we can kind of go back to these mission-driven companies and saying, hey, we've built this really good community of purpose-driven professionals who are interested in companies like yours. So that's kind of where all the focus has been right now, is just to keep on building the applicant side.
Got it. Makes a ton of sense, because you probably won't have that hard of a time finding companies looking for talent, mission-driven companies looking for mission-driven people, right?
Yeah.
Do you see yourselves moving away from Bubble or no code anytime in the future?
Not anytime soon. I think, you know, it's doing the job now. You know, if there's a point in the future where we need to, you know, move onto another platform, then sure, we'll do what we need to do. But, you know, right now it does everything I need it to do.
I think that we can even end with that, because if you had this knowledge before, but prior to 2019-ish, I was I lost my faith in no code for a few years, because it was the last time I had tried things, it was too early in the process. Right. And I was like thinking it's going to take a while before we can do this. And then in 2019, I met a friend, and he had built his product using Webflow, Zapier integration in a little bit of code. And I was, wow, something's changed. And that's when I got into this kind of mission to understand the limits of no code. And it's very, very, very exciting to hear you, who's been building a product for 2 years. You are happy with your product. Of course, always something to build, right? But you're happy with your product, and you're saying no code is doing the job. It's definitely a milestone.
And I think that's what any new founder that's kind of just launching something or want to start building something, and it's kind of their first idea, like, because that would be the most common question I would get around Bubble from other founders, is like, what's its capacity like? You know, like, can it handle? And it's like, I've never, you know, got to a point where it's broke or anything like that. And I think most people won't. You know, so it does everything it needs to do. You can, like, I was blown away. And I think it's probably because I built that invoice template initially, right? And I knew the capabilities of it. And I was like, oh, wow, this, you know, all works. And I did it myself, you know, with a bit of help from Alec. So that would be my kind of answer to anyone that would question whether it can handle whatever they're trying to build. Yes, it can. Just start building.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Dale.
Thank you.
I was able to learn a lot from your experience. I had a great time talking to you, and I really, really, really appreciate what you're bringing to the world, because more people doing work that matters, which I think it's how you position yourself on LinkedIn, right?
Exactly.
Is so important. So thank you so much, man.
Of course, I think so too. And I'll just say, if anyone listening or watching, if they do have questions, I love talking about no code and my experience. So yeah, please reach out, and I'm happy to chat.
Yeah, please, people, talk to Dale. He's done it, and he really done it.
Done it and doing it, and still working my way through.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Bye,
Have
folks.
a good one, man.
I hope you got excited to build your own thing with no code after this conversation. And if you want more, please follow me on LinkedIn and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming service. I'm Daniel Weinman, and this was No Code Explorers.